Hey, what's up? It's Jesse here with Happy Homes, and I'm going to go through 8 costs of living on your own and owning your own house. There's a lot of different things that people might overlook when purchasing a home, but I'm going to go through those 8 things. And I'm telling you right now, you're definitely going to want to stay through the entire video because some of these things I'm telling you were a surprise to me, and I don't want them to be a surprise to you. So without further ado, let's get into this list. But before we do get into this list, if this is your first time to my channel and you want to know everything about the home buying process, make sure you turn on your subscribe button and you hit that notification bell so you're notified each and every time I drop a new video, because I absolutely love sharing content with the world from a real estate professional's point of view and a buyer's point of view and an investor's point of view. So I have 3 different broad spectrums of different opinions and different points of view that I love to share, whether it's my investment cap, my home buyer and seller cap, or my real estate professional cap. So this one is going to be kind of a mixed between the home buyer, homeowner, and real estate professional, just because I know the costs and actually investor as well. So owning investment properties, there's different costs that are involved there. But when you buy a home, and hopefully you want to include home ownership into your portfolio, you'll eventually turn that into an investment property. So the first cost of home ownership is actually your mortgage. So when you get a loan for your home, you have to get a mortgage. And typically your mortgage includes or may not include specific things such as, and we'll go through those right now, but you need to make sure when you're working with your lender that you say, hey, what does my mortgage actually include? Because sometimes your mortgage might include or not include your taxes and insurance. So you need to make sure that you're being very, very specific and clear about that, because a lot of companies, they'll just hold your taxes in an escrow account. So then you're not having to pay those taxes when they come time and it's due. They just pay them for you. However, if you say, I don't want to pay taxes, which I've done on some of my properties, brand new construction, because they use what they call a millage report to set the tax rate. And when they looked at my taxes on a house where the neighbor's house was $5,000 a year in taxes, they were trying to charge me $15,000 a year. There's actually a specific percentage that they can't tax you over your neighbor's house, which in the city I lived in, it was actually 3%. So I told the company this and they said, well, this is our standard operating procedure. We need to put $15K into the account. And I said, you're crazy. I'm just going to withdraw my taxes and I'll just pay them on my own. So that's number one, is your mortgage. Make sure that you're very clear in everything that's wrapped up. And I can't wait to share with the ones that are going to be surprising to you. But the second thing that I want to talk about are your property taxes, which we kind of just discussed. But here's the key fact about property taxes is that typically every single area that you're looking to buy a home in will have a standard percentage of what the property taxes are. The crazy part is some areas are less than 0.5%. And down in Texas, some of the property taxes are 3% of the sales price of the home. So if the house is $500K, you're looking at $15,000 in property taxes in a lot of places. Now, in all the markets that I own houses, is my property taxes are anywhere between 0.5% and 1%. I don't like those 3% taxes. So you have to be very cognizant. A lot of people see cheap homes and they think, wow, I'm going to hit the jackpot. Well, they don't realize that if their property taxes are $15,000 a year, that's an extra $1,250 a month in just taxes. Now, let's just say you're looking at a market that has a 3% property tax rate versus a 1%. That's going to give you a savings of $850 on a $500,000 house. So personally, I don't like just dumping my money into taxes. So I like to look for the areas that have lower tax rates. And that's something you control by finding a place that has low tax rates. The third thing that you can control in home ownership is actually what they call PMI, which is your mortgage insurance. So depending on how much money you actually put down on your loan is how much PMI you're going to pay, and depending on your credit score. So your credit score is going to give you a better interest rate, and better credit is going to give you a better rate on PMI. So back in the day when the market crashed in 2008, if you put less than 20% down it was just a standard rate of PMI. And then you had to refinance your house when you had over 20% loan to value to get rid of that PMI. It didn't matter if you put 19% down or 5%, the PMI was the same. And then you had to refi. Well, in today's day and age, and this is where people always think they have to put 20% down, which you don't, is your PMI will just naturally fall off based on the schedule. So let's just say you put 15% down and you need to get to 20% loan to value ratio to get rid of the PMI. Instead of them charging you a full 100% of that PMI, they're only going to charge you 75% because you've already got 15% LTV. And they know that in 5 years, you'll be at that 20% mark. Typically, it'll just naturally fall off. Here's the deal. Is we know that home prices typically increase about 10% every year in a standard market. So in 1 year, you might have your 20% LTV. So a lot of banks actually issue the opportunity to refinance without taking out cash for a very, very low fee. Some of them even don't even charge. They just have to charge the title standard fees, which are typically, less than $2,000. But if you're taking cash out and you're wanting to use your home as a home equity line of credit, then it's going to cost you a lot more. So here's a crazy pro tip, which I'm going to give you some more crazy pro tips down the line here, is that if you sometimes take PMI, so you put 19% down versus 20% down, you carrying just a little bit of PMI will drop your interest rate because they're saying that the loan is now insured and it's less risky. So that's something you want to talk to your lender about. A lot of times we'll have, from a real estate agent and a buyer's perspective, we'll take a little bit of PMI to get that rate down because interest rates will cost you a lot of money in the long run. You'll eventually pay more into your interest than you will be paying towards your principal. The fourth cost of home ownership is something that you can't even control really, is your insurance rate. So not only do you have to pay insurance on the mortgage if you have less than 20% LTV, but you also have to carry insurance on the actual physical building. So a lot of people think like, oh, I'm carrying mortgage insurance, I don't need insurance on my house. That's false. You always need to carry insurance on your home. So when you go into buying a house, through the lending process, your lender will typically request a binder from an insurance rep. That's typically someone they have a relationship with. They'll show you how much your insurance is going to be. And then at the same time, they'll typically say like, well, have you got a quote on your auto insurance yet lately? And they'll say, well, let's try to bundle it all together and save you some money. So at that time is typically when people change insurance agents and move into a new policy, which makes sense. You'll also typically see the insurance policy isn't for the same value of what you paid for your home because what they're insuring is the cost to rebuild the home. So the land has a set value. If the house catches on fire and burns to the ground, it typically doesn't diminish the value of the land unless it's like a deferred timber land, which obviously if you had deferred timber and it caught on fire and it all vanished, then you would have an insurance claim on that. But you'll see, just make sure the lender typically has to carry a minimum dollar figure, and it's usually very, very agreeable. The fifth cost of home ownership or living on your own, if you're owning a house, is whether or not the house is in a homeowners association. So a lot of times people say, I don't want to live in an HOA. Well, HOAs in different states mean a lot of different things. In Portland, for example, where I'm originally from, the HOAs there were super lenient and very far and few between. People come from California and Arizona and they say, I don't want to live in an HOA. And I have a couple houses in Phoenix and the HOAs are crazy. So I totally understand it, but some of my HOAs are very different. Some of them have a very high monthly fee. Some of them charge a very small quarterly fee. Some of them have a biannual fee. Some of them have an annual fee. If you're living in a condo, they might even have an assessment where it looks like, $500 a month for your HOA fees, which covers your insurance, your water, your sewer, your electrical, and then it'll have a secondary fee, which will be like for an assessment where they had to put on a new roof. So that assessment might be going on for 2, 3, 4 years at $400 a month. So if it's an unknown assessment that's coming up, you can actually get what they call assessment insurance, which would cover an unknown assessment that's not planned. But a lot of these HOAs have what they call reserve studies and maintenance schedules where you can see, hey, we have these maintenance pieces coming up. We're going to have to do them here. And we don't have enough in the budget. So we need to increase our HOAs. And typically if it's a house in an HOA, they don't do those types of things because typically houses and HOAs are just taking care of the common space and the maintenance for the exterior of the community. Now, if it has a pool, typically the HOA fees are a little bit higher. And if the pool ever goes kaputs down the road, obviously they're going to have to pay for that. So the one thing I would just be very cognizant about is if you're looking to buy a condo, it does look cheaper but the HOA fees are typically jacked up. And I see a lot of condos that are dirt cheap with crazy HOA fees. Personally, I would never want to live in one, but if you wanted to live in a condo and it was a really nice, super well built, never had an assessment, HOA's in great standing, they have enough money in their reserves, then that would be a good condo to live in. But I've seen some condos with absolute disastrous HOAs. And here's the thing, FHA loans, which are government loans, a lot of them don't even give loans for condos. And before you purchase one, you always find out if it's in an assessment or litigation because they had faulty, work done on that condo association. And now that contractor or service provider is out of business. So now who's going to have to pay for it? The association. So that's why you should always look into getting an assessment insurance policy through your homeownership policy, because an assessment policy is typically only like 12 or 14 bucks a year. The only thing I'd say is that they only pay out that assessment claim once the assessment is closed. I've actually sold condos coming from a real estate perspective. I've sold condos where it was under assessment and it could only get a cash buyer, and they actually had insurance to pay for their assessment, which was $7,000, but they ended up just paying it at closing to get rid of the condo, which I thought was crazy at the time when I was not making any money in the real estate business. But then after I started doing well and realizing like, oh, $7,000 to get rid of this mess, it might've been well worth it to them. And it was. The sixth cost you need to take into consideration is all of your utilities. So gas, water, sewer, electrical, garbage, you name it. It comes in your house as a service. You're going to have to pay cable, internet. You're going to need to pay those bills. Now there's associations out there that actually take care of all those costs, which might be a good value exchange for you, but you have to take a look into that and figure it out for yourself. And my pro tip that I'll say to this, coming from a homeowner's perspective, is make sure that if they have an equal pay program, that means they look at your last 12 months of usage and then they spread it out over 12 months. Do that, because it's nice to have the same payment every month versus going into the summer and now you have a $600, $800 a month electrical bill, where in the wintertime it's next to nothing. That happens to me in Arizona all the time, is I have a couple Airbnbs down there, and in the summertime it's $800 a month. In the wintertime, it drops down to like $30, $40 a month. Well, if I can spread that out through 12 months, it keeps my bills right in line. And I love that. I do not love getting an $800, $1,200 electric bill because somebody was cranking my AC through 110-degree heat. The seventh cost, before I get into the final one that you should stay to, and like I said before, is if you like this content, make sure you give me a like. I really appreciate everybody out there. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do so by hitting that subscribe button and turning on your notifications so you never miss your chance of watching me talk about the real estate market from a home buyer, homeowner, investor, and real estate professional perspective. So number 7 is what we call vendors. So this is your landscapers, your pest control people, your pool maintenance people. If you have a pool, there's even wells in some houses or septic tanks. These are people that are going to come out there and just maintain those specific items on a monthly or quarterly basis. I think it's very important that you treat your house in a very, very nice manner. All the time people come to us and say, hey, I want to sell my house for top dollar, but they've been smoking in it for 50 years. There's weeds growing everywhere. The house is just in disarray and they haven't been keeping up on, monthly maintenance. It's called deferred maintenance. So when they can't sell their house for top dollar, they have only the person to blame but themselves. And this is just the cost of home ownership. So your mortgage is a cost. Then you have all these other stacked on costs. Like on my Airbnb, my monthly mortgage is $2,000 a month, which includes my PMI, my insurance, and my taxes. And then on top of that, I have to pay all my utilities, which is another, and my pool people, my pest control, it's another almost $1,000. So on a $2,000 house, I'm actually spending $3,000. And then I have to pay the property management 30%. So realistically, that house needs to generate $5,000 a month for me to even break even. So it's a lot of upfront costs. Like, and if you're just living there, do you want to spend $3,000 a month versus paying $2,000 a month towards rent that you don't have any ownership in? That's just a big question that we get a lot. So the 8th and final thing that's going to cost money is what I call miscellaneous maintenance. So these are going to be like your HVAC system needs to be serviced twice a year. That's your AC in the springtime, and that's your heater in the fall time. There's a lot of home warranty companies out there that provide 2 services a year. And also, if you're in a very dry climate, you should be changing your filter in your HVAC system every single month. That's a huge thing. A lot of people don't do. Don't buy the expensive ones, buy the cheap ones and just make it going. There's also costs like upkeep. Maybe you need some touch-up paint done, handyman work inside your house. you got your home inspected when you bought it, and there was just a bunch of things that were random things that needed to be addressed. These are all costs that come into home ownership. Also, there's winterizing your house. Maybe you got to get your sprinklers blown out because you're in sub-freezing climates and the sprinkler lines will freeze up. There's also, people always say like, oh, there's vents in my house and I need to close them up. I would highly recommend speaking to someone locally that knows about that, because vents in houses are typically designed to move air in and through the house. And when you close them up, especially in moist climates, it'll get moisture underneath that house and it'll create mold. So maybe putting those styrofoam plugs in there aren't the best thing for your situation. However, putting styrofoam covers on all hose bibs during the wintertime, if it freezes, is a very smart thing to do, because in Houston, when they had that big freeze a couple of years ago, my business partner lives down there, and the line started freezing. And then what did the city do? They actually turned up the pressure, because they're like, oh, if we turn up the pressure, it'll move the water through the lines. Well, what it did is it freaking put a lot of pressure on the ice in the lines, and it started blowing the spigots off the house. It was crazy. There was water flooding in through people's houses. And actually, during the hurricane down in Florida that just happened, Ron DeSantis actually talked about this, and the water system companies came out and they said that they were very slow to bring the water back online, because they're like, we didn't want to have happen in Florida what happened in Texas, where they overloaded the lines with water. So one last pro tip I'm going to give you before I go, this is a bonus if you stayed all the way to the end, is make sure that if you have moss on your roof, you do not get up there and pressure wash it. The biggest mistake anybody makes in home ownership is pressure washing their roof. I'm going to tell you why. It's because you're up there blowing the granulars off. And what happens is those granulars are designed to trickle the water down. So when you're blowing them off, it's actually deteriorating the life of the roof. There's a lot of companies out there that will say that they're going up to clean your roof, and they use a low pressure water that actually like gets the moss off. And I really don't like that. There's some systems that actually they'll go up there and they'll sprinkle little powder on there. It kills the moss and then it blows off in the wind. And then you just got to clean your gutters a week later. But there's a lot of companies too that'll go up there and sprinkle stuff on the moss. And then they'll go up there with this little machine that looks like a soft wash, which is okay as long as it's not pressure washing, and it'll scrub the moss off. But I still don't like that. The best system in the world, in my opinion, is just sprinkling the powder up there. That'll kill the moss, and then it'll just blow off in the wind and then clean your gutters. That is the best option. I've had multiple people coming from a real estate agent's perspective who went up there. They blew their roof off. They made it look sparkling clean, but they blew all the granulars off, and they just had a roof that had 10 years of life left on it go to zero, and they had to replace it because the appraiser that was doing the appraisal on the house said that the roof was blown. No joke, is freaking crazy. So I really hope you enjoyed this list. If you like what I'm saying, you want to see more, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and you turn on your notifications so you're notified each and every time I drop a new video. I hope you guys stay safe out there. And until next time, we'll catch you later.